funny enough, before you guys got here this morning, I marked 2 assignments. And the 2 assignments that I marked were financial based. And guys, it's basic stuff that we know. Who's been at school? When last were you at school? Sorry, your name? Bianca? When last were you at school? A while ago. Okay, I don't want to get ages or anything. 7 years. Any who's before 7 years? 2000. 2000. Okay. So let's say 10 years ago we were basically at school, correct? Who remembers grade 4, creative writing? Come on, grade 4, standard 2, guys, for those old guys. Eh? Standard 2. Can you remember when we started doing creative writing? What were we taught at school? Pierre, can you remember? Punctuation, yes, very important. Sorry? Grammar, very important. Sashalia, am I?
Finger spaces and cursive writing.
Cursive writing, okay, I'm not.
School last year.
So. Okay. Martin? Structuring a sentence. What else? Muni?
Flow diagrams.
Flow diagrams. Good, yes. Portia?
Introduction, body, and conclusion.
Say that again, please.
Introduction, body, and conclusion.
Is that simple? It is so simple. I cannot tell you how many learners forget it. Okay, I marked assignments today where it's totally disjointed and totally illogical because the learner has forgotten those basic steps. You've got an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. What do we basically do in our introduction? You can tell me. Right, an overview, a brief overview of what you're going to be discussing in your basic work that's going to follow, correct? And then your body, Sasha, sorry.
That's fine. It's your side to the story or what you think
your factual backing up of what you, the path that you're basically going to take. And then your conclusion, Brandon?
Your conclusion would be your final outcomes of those other facts that you presented.
Right. Now, this is what happens, guys. We start off with a decent introduction. Our body is okay. And then all of a sudden, I get to page 16 and the assignment ends. Good mark, bad mark. It's not. I won't give it an overall bad mark, but overall, you'll see when we go through the PMAs. Have you looked at some PMAs before? Have you looked at some? You'll see there's a mark out of 10. And that 10 breaks up logical flow, introduction, conclusion, body, and conclusion. I can't give any marks as a marker if you haven't got a conclusion. Does that make sense, guys? And the big thing, I actually made the mistake already a couple of times. I said Sashia, and Sasha corrected me and she said Sasha. Now, why did I make that mistake? Why did I pronounce her name Sashia? It's how I read it, okay? And it's also, I've got, my mother tongue is what? English. If my mother tongue was Zulu, anybody Zulu here? Zulu mother tongue? How would you have pronounced her name? You don't know it. Sashia, okay, as well. French, eh? Yeah. French, how would you have pronounced?
Just correct me when I say grammar, you say grammar.
Okay, but how would you have said it? Sashia. Sasha, you would have said Sasha. Interesting. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that with your PMA, it's the number one thing I say to learners all the time. If your mother tongue is Muslim, Hindu, maybe it's Gujarati, maybe it's Zulu, maybe it's French, it doesn't mean that you're silly or you're stupid or you don't know any better. It just means that if your mother tongue is a certain language, you're translating directly from your mother tongue into the English language, correct? So an Afrikaans person will make mistakes like this. They is going to the shop and we all laugh at them, correct? Because it sounds so funny. But it's not that they're being stupid or silly or they don't know any better. It's that they're translating directly from their mother tongue into the English language. A Zulu person will say things like, the machine, she is hard, correct? If you're translating direct, and we laugh about it. It's not really a laughing matter, guys. It's because we're not editing our documents or we're not getting somebody else to edit our documents. So if I can teach you something today, please, before you submit your assignment, who edits your assignment? Not me, not yourself. In other words, if I write something, who's got kids here? You guys are all relatively young. Who of your kids battle with maths at school? Maths, mathematics, not yet. I guarantee you, my teaching goes right back to teaching kids. And I remember it was so frustrating for certain parents because a kid will see 1 + 1 is 3. Is it incorrect? But the kid is it incorrect? Yes, of course it's incorrect. But a kid that sees that as being correct will see it as being correct every single time if they're correcting themselves. Does that make sense? So to come back to our PMA, if I make a grammatical mistake, they is going to the shop and I'm an Afrikaans speaker and I'm translating directly into English. I'm going to read it as being correct every single time, even if I edit it 20 times. So the point I'm making is who edits it for you? Somebody else. And not only one person. Husbands and wives who's got spouses, partners, get them to edit it. But then you have to be open to criticism. And that's the difficult thing. Because criticism, a lot of us see it as being negative, correct? But it's also positive because that's how we grow. Make sense, guys? Okay, so we've learned a lot of things. Remember those grammatical structures. Remember the basics as Portia said to us. Just keep it simple. It's that introduction, the body, and conclusion. Right, guys, let's get started. The purpose of the discussion and certificate. Well, we basically chatted about that already. Correct? Emmanuel, you okay? Okay. The next one, learning outcomes. Now, guys, if I can teach you anything today as well, is that before you get, am I correct in saying that all of your module material is here? Correct? So every single module that you're going to attend at DaVinci is already there. You've got the material, the majority of it. Correct?
I think we just got 2 subjects.
Just for today and yesterday. Okay. So learning outcomes are so vitally important because what I would like from you guys is before you get to class, literally maybe 10, 15 minutes before the class begins, you will have your modules in front of you, correct? Even if you've never seen it before. Open up to the PMA. Read through the PMA, and even if it's, you say, oh, I don't know what's going on, that's fine, because I'm going to teach you to pick up on action verbs. Do you know what action verbs are? And don't panic if you don't. Don't panic if you don't, because we're going to learn about them today. I'm going to teach you to pick up on action verbs. What does this assignment want from me? Because often we don't address the question. Agreed? Sometimes we write about an assignment and we kind of go off on a track. Go off on a tangent and we never ever really come back, and then the marker says to us, you know what, you actually haven't addressed this particular question correctly. So just be aware of that, okay guys? So learning outcomes are so very, very important. If I can give you any advice, before you get to class, read through that PMA and say, geez, like, I don't know what this means. Because now you've already got questions you want to ask Prof. Ben. You've already got questions you want to ask Richard. So when you get to class, let's say we're doing economics, and you say, Emmanuel reads through the PMA and he says, hang on a second, I've got to this word. And they keep on mentioning this word. Are words important in PMAs? Are words important, guys? Very, very important. You can give me another word for the use of words. What is that word? Do you know it? Sasha? Semantics. Have you heard of semantics? Semantic. Have you never heard of it? Okay. Semantics, Prof. Ben will tell you he loves semantics as well. The use of words. If I say to you, if we're doing finance here, you know, with all the corruption that's happening all over the world, not only in South Africa, all over the world with regards to finance, if I say to you accountants need to take a conservative approach in grey areas, what is the problem with that statement?
Isn't it conservative and grey? Isn't that not
100%. From an English point of view, we all know what conservative means, correct? We all know what grey means, correct? But what is my definition of that word and what is your definition of that word? You see where semantics comes in, guys? So it's very, very important that you're talking the same language, even though it is the English language. So remember, when it comes to a PMA, talk the same language. You'll see that when you deal with certain modules, have you already found that with Prof. Ben? Yesterday he used certain words over and over again. Can you maybe give me one or two of them? What word does Prof. Ben like using? Does he like using the word problem? Did you pick that up?
Brain.
Brain? Okay, brain. Yes, he likes using the word brain. What else? What about challenge? He doesn't really like the word problem, correct? He likes to use the word challenge. Because to him, a problem is a challenge. And challenge is more positive. Would you agree with that statement? So throughout this whole module and throughout all of your modules, remember semantics. So when you pick up that PMA and you're looking through your PMA, remember to say, okay, this particular facilitator, they're picking up on these words. What is my interpretation of that word, and what is their interpretation of that word? And that's why, if you just to come back to finance, why there's often a great amount of wasteful and fruitless expenditure and corruption in finance. Why? Because these very clever people pick up on words, simple words like grey. And they say, well, that's grey for me. And maybe Brandon's idea of grey is just off-white. Maybe my idea of grey is pitch black. Understand what I'm saying? So in other words, we're sitting on the fence, and it's grey areas, but all of a sudden those grey areas become darker and darker and darker. And that's why our definitions, our semantics of words, the understanding of the words is very, very important for us. Make sense, guys? I haven't lost anybody. Simpiwe, you're right? Okay, good stuff. What goes wrong in the professional writing process? Guys, we've already chatted about that. I'm going to come back to it as well. And then the elements of the professional writing process, which we're going to get to as well. But Portia's already chatted about that when she spoke about the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. But we're going to get to it now. Right, guys, what goes wrong in the professional writing process? Look at the first one. Why don't you read for me, please, Munir?
No structure or synthesis.
Right, stop there. What do we mean by that? Remember we spoke about semantics, Rafielwe? No structure or synthesis. What does that mean?
No, it doesn't follow logic or no flow.
Excellent. Excellent. It's disjointed. Now, to come back to our children's situation, if you give something to a child and they see it as being logical, for example, a lady, Munir, how many pairs of shoes have you got? Three. How many pairs of shoes have you got? No, I'm just joking, okay? But what's logical for ladies and what's logical for gents and what's logical for one person to another is not necessarily logical. So what am I saying? Get somebody else to edit your assignment for you. So that structural synthesis, I will read something, I'll say, no, this makes sense to me. Rafiel will pick it up and say, geez, Richard, I don't know what you're saying here. This doesn't make sense. You've moved from point 1 to point 7, and then you talk about point 2. It's totally disjointed. There's no structural synthesis. Why don't you rather take this point and talk about it first? Make sense, guys? And that's where the editing process will help you. Okay, right. Right, and then emotive language, inconsistent referencing. We're going to chat about that. DaVinci, they want you to use the Harvard style of referencing. You don't have to write this down, guys. It's all in your modules. Okay, so don't panic about this. And I don't even know the correct format. I'm being honest with you. From a Harvard style of referencing. If you go onto the computer, you might find 5 or 6 different variations of the Harvard style of referencing. What's important is that you've got your module in front of you. You say, I have to use the Harvard style of referencing. You've got an example, and you just copy the example every time you reference. Does that make sense, guys? So you don't have to learn it off by heart. We don't expect that of you at all. All you do is you just must make sure that you're consistent with that referencing. When they say inconsistent referencing, it's when learners use the Harvard style of referencing, and then the next, all of a sudden, then they're using the Oxford, then they go back to the Harvard, then there's a mix match of Harvard and Oxford, and then all of a sudden they're referencing, using some other referencing method. Consistency when you're doing academic writing is very, very important. Does that make sense, guys? With that said, I love this. I'm going to just show you something here. This you haven't got. This is just something I got off the internet. So you can write this down. It's very, very simple. I love this. Okay, it was taken from a university in... Oh, sorry. I don't know why I did that. Okay, it was taken from a university of Coventry, the Coventry University in the UK. And they talk about ARC. Isn't that lovely? ARC, A-R-C. And look at it. They say when you reference, remember to be, look at the first one, A stands for accurate. Be accurate. The next one, be rigorous. In other words, you must be careful of bias and indoctrination. And the third one is, which is what we already chatted about, be consistent. Now you guys are doing your degree, correct? Your BCom degree, correct?
Yeah.
Correct? When you move to your master's level and your PhD level, they will be very, and I guarantee you, there are going to be many of you in this class who will move to masters and hopefully to your PhD as well. This is so important that you get this, especially that last one, consistency. If you're using the Harvard style of referencing, you have to use Harvard style all the time. And the same Harvard style. And I'm going to show you how on the internet you can go from one university and they can give you different variations of the Harvard style of referencing. Okay, does that make sense, guys? So, ARC, you can write it down, ARC. Remember to be, what is A, Emmanuel? Don't read. Accurate. What is R? Rigorous. And your name, Joe?
Consistent.
Consistent. Okay. Isn't that lovely? Easy to remember. So when you're doing your PMA, just remember ARC. Accurate, rigorous, and consistent. Make sense, guys? Okay. Right. Let's just move back to the slides here. Right. It says there, wrong tenses. Well, once again, we spoke about, sorry, before we move on to wrong tenses, emotive language, wrong register. Now, what does that mean, Martin? How did we write when we were in grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, maybe even in high school? How did we write? Can you remember? English, how did we write? What was that called?
Are we talking about the first person, third person, and that type?
Well, yes, that as well, but how did we write when we wrote in English? It was called, what was that called? Creative writing, correct? Can you remember creative writing? How did we write there? Emotive language, guys. Emotive language, that's creative writing, correct? Correct? So what kind of words make writing emotive?
The adjectives.
Adjectives, right. Excellent. Thank you, Brandon. Describing words, okay. So things like, it was a lovely warm day. Academically, do we write like that? No. We stick to the facts. So be careful of saying things, apartheid was awful. Even if you've got strong, no, it's a difficult one, guys. If you've been affected by something, affected by apartheid, now you're writing about that particular subject, and now you need to try and be unemotive as possible. Is that difficult? It's very difficult. But if you're writing academically, you need to stick to the facts and stay away from emotion. Is that difficult? It's very difficult. Especially if you're speaking about something that you're passionate about. Okay, so what am I saying? Get somebody else to edit your document for you, because they might say, hang on a second, you can't say that. I know that's how you feel, but you need to say it in a different way. Difficult, eh, guys? So it's easy to say. Munir, are you okay? Any questions up to now, guys? You want Tommy? You're right. Just going to go around the class. You'll feel where you're right? Portia?
Yes.
You okay. Sashalia. Just pronounce it. Sashalia. Sorry, Sashalia. You're right, Munir? Okay. Bianca, you okay? And Brenda, you okay? Okay. All right, Brenda, why don't you read the next one for me, please? Copy.
Copy and paste style from business reports or
Oh, sorry, wrong tenses. It was my fault. Wrong tenses. Once again, we've chatted about this already, but I'll go over it again. What am I talking about there? You guys tell me. What are we talking about there? Mother tongue languages, translating directly from one language into another language. So wrong tenses, they is at the shop. She went to the shop now, because we went past tense and now present tense, okay? Because we're mixing up our tenses, because we're translating directly often from one language to another, and we haven't edited out our document enough. Make sense, guys? Okay. Right, and then copy and paste style from business reports or the internet. Now, you guys can laugh about this, but I can't tell you how many assignments I get where people just copy, click, paste, and say, there we go, Richard, mark this. And they expect an A. Don't you love the way? And then it's even got page numbers from the site that they took it from. Or in this module, guys, I promise you, I can write a book about things that I've got, okay? So copy and paste style. Guys, we're not stupid. I might look stupid, especially with this earpiece in my ear, but I promise you, and you need to cite your references correctly. What was that other slide that I put up? How did it start? 3 letters? A, R, C. What was the A again? Accurate. So if you're accurate and you copy and pasting, how accurate are you being? If you're being rigorous, how rigorous are you being? Because what does rigorous tell us? That we need a variety of sources to bring together, correct? Especially from a BCom degree point of view. Tell me if you disagree with anything. The one thing that I love and also don't like at the same time is the first day, and maybe, okay, today's your second day, correct? Correct, today's your second day. People feel intimidated. Are you feeling intimidated? Not good, I'm glad. No, good. Anybody feeling intimidated? From a point of view of putting up their hand and saying, you know what, I actually don't agree with that. Brandon?
No.
Good. I'm very glad. Because intimidation is the worst thing from a learning point of view. If you disagree with something just because a facilitator is saying it or it says so in the book, challenge it. Because remember, that's what Mode 2 learning is all about. And that's what we want in your PMAs as well. We don't want you just to accept things and cut and paste them. Okay, makes sense, guys? Okay. Right, the next one.
Sorry, okay, for instance, copy and paste, but say there's a certain section, you just got to be, in other words, we just have to be very careful on how we copy and paste. Because what happens if there's a phrase or quote that I'm taking out, I just got to make sure that
Right.
I'm referencing it properly.
Guys, Brandon's very, very right. Obviously, your PMA will depend on how much you cut and paste. So if I look at a finance module again, I will say I'm looking for the income statement, balance sheet, and statement of retained earnings for a particular company. You're going to have to attach that. I'm not going to take off marks because you've attached the whole balance sheet, because that's what I've asked you to do. You with me?
Yeah.
But if you copy and pasting and you say open inverted commas, because this is my citing, so I'm opening inverted commas at the beginning of the page, and 2 pages later you close inverted commas, and your assignment's only 3 pages long, am I going to give you bad marks? Definitely. Okay, because two of those 3 pages is not your work. You with me, guys? Okay, so within reason, definitely, as Brandon says. So that copy and paste style will be determined on your PMA. Okay, makes sense, guys? Okay. Right, over or under explanation. When do you over explain something, Rafael?
Probably when you start repeating.
So when do you do that? When you repeat things, when do you do that? With your child. Emmanuel? When you're confused, okay, valid point, Simpiwe. When do you find you start repeating things?
It's when you're losing focus also.
When you're losing focus, 100%. Nontombi, when do you start repeating things?
When I'm out of ideas.
When you answer.
Say that again, Portia.
When you're out of ideas.
Now, from a marking point of view, when we start seeing repetition, we realize that there's not enough that's gone into the assignment, correct? And that you're out of ideas. You've picked up on 2 ideas or 3 ideas, and you're just rephrasing it again and again and again. So straight away, your marks are going to be affected from that. Okay, so just be careful of that. Under explanation, when do you under explain things?
You don't understand that.
You don't understand it? Somebody said it as well?
You don't go more in the details.
You don't elaborate too much? What else? Somebody said it, yeah? Was it Martin? Simpiwe?
When you didn't do a lot of research.
So you haven't elaborated enough, as Pia says. Okay, yes. But also when we under-explain, it's when we need to synthesize more, correct? So maybe you need to do a PMA in 10 pages, and you think, geez, 10 pages is going to be too long. And then you start working, and you realize, hang on a second, I've got 20 points, but they only want 10 points. So then you under-explain because you want to include all of those 20 points. Make sense? And that leads to illogical flow. So be careful of that as well. Make sense, guys? Sasha, you okay? Okay. Was there a question there? You're right. Okay, you're right. Mindless repetition. Well, same thing, guys. Mindless repetition. We know we do this. And you might think, Richard, why are you doing this? Is so simple. Guys, I mark assignments every single day, and guys make this mistake. Okay, so just be aware of this. When you write your PMA, open this up, pick this up, and say, have I made any of these mistakes? Okay. Obvious lack of revision. Well, it's self-explanatory, that one. Make sense, guys? Any questions? Right. Elements of the professional writing process. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I'm going to ask for feedback. Marianne, your feedback's going to be first. I'm going to ask you, where do you think that diagram starts? And where does it end? Just 30 seconds, look at it. Where do you think that flow diagram starts and where does it end? Research process. What do you say, Simpiwe?
go with first plan and
I'd
then
say right. Writing. I'd say writing.
Writing process, okay? Guys, I'm glad you thought about it, because that's the problem with PMAs. Often we just dive in and we assume that we know what we're talking about. But from a flow diagram point of view, there's no 1, 2, 3, or 4. Yes, it starts at the writing process, first plan and then write, correct? Because we plan and then write. I'm going to throw it on its head a little bit. I'm going to say, think about that for a second. What did I say this morning? I said, when you get in to a module, what do? You pick up your module, open it up and read the PMA. And in effect, what is that? The end, correct? That's the last outcome that we basically expect of you to accomplish that particular PMA. So what I'm saying is sometimes we need to actually start with structuring the response. Read it again and again. Now, guys, I'm not God up here. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying to you, just be a little bit creative there and say to yourself, what works for you? So some people prefer writing process. They like planning and then writing. I like throwing myself in the deep end a little bit, and I say, read it again and again. So I pick up that PMA and I read it again and again and again until it starts sinking in. I say, okay, what do they mean by that word? Where are my action verbs? What am I going to say there? So I actually like the structure. I like starting with the structuring the response first. Brandon, what do you think?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. What works for you?
For me, I would have actually started with my the first plan.
First plan and then
So
write.
obviously, I would have broken it up and then started doing research.
Okay.
But obviously, you pointed out it's actually a good thing to actually try and establish my outcomes and then put that outcomes into my
Yes.
first plan.
And it's not set in concrete, guys, because what you can do is you can structure the response first, then move to the writing process, research process, acknowledging sources, and then structure your response again. You with me? So what I'm saying, when you look at a flow diagram, there's no 1, 2, 3. Yes, all of us say, yeah, it starts at the writing process, but does it? That's what I'm asking you to. I'm asking you to ask yourself that question. Just because a book says it must start at the writing process doesn't mean that's right for you. I think for a lot of learners, Sasha, you disagree with me? Am I talking nonsense?
No.
Okay, where does it start for you?
It can start anywhere. That's what I said initially.
For you?
It can start anywhere. It depends on the piece
Yes.
of work that you're doing. 'Cause
I like
sometimes-
that.
Sometimes you can start at acknowledging the sources because you want to only work with 3 different authors. So
Okay.
you have to look at what type of work they're writing and then structure the response, write the process and so on. So it just depends on what you're writing.
Okay, Sasha's actually brings up a very good point. If you're doing a module, and maybe you're doing a module in economics, and you've done economics second year in varsity, so you feel more afraid with the subject, correct? Maybe you can say, you know what, some of that easy stuff I can bypass. I can actually already start with this, structuring the response, because I know about this, correct? But then, next module you get into finance, and you don't know how to add 1 + 1, because the last time you did it was in, I don't know, grade 10 or grade 11. So that becomes more problematic or more challenging for you. You see, I use the word challenging. Okay, so just look at those 4 processes. Writing process, first plan and then write. Research process, write like an academic, not a creative writer. Okay, acknowledging sources. What must we remember there, Martin?
Things like that, where you do information and things.
Okay, but what must we remember about acknowledging sources, Marianne? Thank you, Simpiwe. ARC. Okay, guys, if I can imprint that in your brain, ARC. Just think of that ARC all the time. It helps so. It's something so simple, but it will help you with your PMA. Have I utilized ARC? Am I accurate? Am I rigorous? And am I consistent with my referencing style? Make sense, Emmanuel?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, and then structuring the response. Very, very important. Read it again and again. And I'd like to add something there. What do you think I would like to add? Look at the statement. Read it again and again. Who reads it again and again?
You can give it to somebody else.
Excellent. Get somebody else to read it, and then get somebody else to read it, and then you read it again. But you mustn't read it again and again, because you're going to read your mistakes as being correct. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Right. So the first step, the writing process, but remember it says element 1, but it doesn't say this is where you start. So you have to decide where you're going to basically start in this process. Purpose of the discussion and certificate. Step 1, understanding the purpose of the assignment through action verbs. Guys, this is so important. If I pick up the PMA and I start reading it. Have you got any PMAs yet, by the way? Did you get a PMA for Prof Ben? Open up that PMA. Open up to the first PMA you got yesterday. I'm going to ask Brenda just to read for us. Yeah, here it is, yeah. Now guys, just look at we're on page, we're number 3, eh? Are we on number 3? Just before, yeah, and it's 3 of 6, eh? And it says critically discuss the current state of the global political economy. That one? Okay, not that one. Okay, give it to me, please. Okay.
This NLD learning assessment.
Okay, let's just get to it for me. I just want to see the wording. Is this it? Yeah. This one.
This is the assignment, the production student.
Okay. Okay. This is a writing one. I don't want us to look at that one. Let's go back to this one here. Oh, you're not doing this one. Okay. Then I want to look at this one. Just look at that one. Page 3 of 6. Page 3 of 6. It's just before the 4th section. So just before 4. Page 3 of 6. So just before 4. Here we go. Sorry, not that one. Is everyone there, guys? Everyone there? No? Portia? Everyone there? Okay. Now, guys, this is what a normal PMA will look like this. Every single one of your PMAs is going to look like this. So, yeah, you can see how many sections is broken up into your 70. 3 sections. I might give you one section where there's just one section out of 70. You might do a finance module that's out of 2 sections, 40 and 30. But that's 70, that's your theory base. Every PMA will have that. The next one out of 10, read it for me, please, Brandon.
Description of application base.
Yes, read it for me, please.
The student is required to provide a simple description of how he or she did or would have done the application.
Okay, every single PMA will have that in. So that there is an overall mark. It's not a separate section. It's what the facilitator, the marker, will actually pick up. Have you understood the content of that particular module? Make sense, guys? So do you see that? So every PMA will have a mark out of 70, and then the next one will be out of 10, and it will be that exact wording. Next one, this is the important one. Why don't you read for me, please, Brenda?
It's presentation of response including the following. Providing an introduction and conclusion.
Stop there. Look at that, guys. That's what Portia spoke about. Remember that. So you're going to get marks for that. So don't leave out an introduction and conclusion. It's worth, how many marks is it worth? 10. Not only the introduction and conclusion, it's all of those things. Carry on, please, Brenda.
It's developing a logical flow argument.
Okay. Carry on.
Using appropriate language. Providing a critical perspective. Attending to layout. Including references. A professional academic submission is expected with correct cited references, a list of references, and a table of contents.
Okay. Very, very important is the last 2 words. What does it say there? Last 3. Table of contents. Guys, why is a table of contents so important in a PMA? Joe?
It's for... Firstly, I think for logic, because that gives, the
Reader?
Yeah, the reader, an idea of what the content, how the content is structured, and the flow of the content.
Excellent. Joe's hit the nail on the head. But it's not only a review for me, the reader, it's a review for him. It's a system of checks and balances. So the 2 assignments I marked today, that's mark out of 70. This particular assignment was broken up into first section 40, second section 30. They only did the first section out of 40. So straight away, how many marks can I give them for the second section out of 30? Not even 1, because they haven't even got on the page. There's nothing there. Because if they did a table of contents, they would have picked up straight away, review, hang on a second, I've done one section out of 40, where's my second section out of 30? Richard can't even give me 1 mark here because there's nothing on the paper. I can't even give him 1 mark. Okay, guys? So a table of contents is so important. Highlight it there. Start every PMA with a table of contents. The one thing it doesn't tell you there is what is also included in a table of contents on the right-hand side. Thank you so much. I'm going to get your name wrong again. Sashaya. Soshalia. Sorry, Soshalia. Soshalia is 100% correct. On the right-hand side, you have got page numbers. So you'll have introduction, page 1. Balance sheet, page 1 to 2. And so you will move on. Everybody understand? And straight away you look down. As a marker, I look down now and I say, okay, Martin, he's basically completed the whole assignment. Now I can go and I can read through his assignment. Have you got me? But if I look at the table of contents and one section's missing, straight away I can't even give you 1 mark for it. Does that make sense, guys? So every assignment will look like that. And look at the last one, guys, that gives you a mark out of 90. Then there's a mark out of 2. And guys, that's for free and for gratis. You know, in Afrikaans they say for gratis. That's for nothing. You just have to go onto that website and they give you 2 marks for nothing, 2%. Turn the page. And you get 3 and 5. And all the 3, the mark of 3 is also just going onto websites. It's a DaVinci library and the VAL library, correct, Pierre? Pierre knows all about this. And all you do is you just go log on and you get 3 extra percent. And Brenda, Bianca, won't you tell me what is the last 5 marks for, please? Guys, I wish I was studying again. 5 marks just for submitting on time. You know how many learners don't get those 5 marks? Because they don't submit on time. 5 marks just for submitting on time. So every single PMA, the last from 70 all the way down to 100, so the last 30 will be exactly like that. Now, do you see why I disagree a little bit with what Ben said? Okay, so it's actually more than 10%. It's maybe around 20%. You can even argue maybe a little bit more than it. Okay, so every assignment will have those last sections from 70 to 100. Everybody okay? Everybody feeling a little bit better now? Okay. Now to come back to understanding the purpose of the assignment through action verbs. Now we've never ever done this before, but that's great because I've never done it as well. So let's look and see if we can understand what they actually require of us. Why don't you read for me, please, Emmanuel? The first one, yeah, critically. Stop there. What is an action verb? Action verb. What does it mean? It's a doing word, correct? So what does this word want us to do in that particular PMA? So Emmanuel said critically discuss. So if we do not understand what they mean by critically discuss, that's going to lead to problems, correct? And guys, I just want you to turn to your, sorry Sasha, can I just over your shoulder here? If you go to your module, you will see that they've given you annexures. There we go. It's page 21 of 44, guys. And they give you a couple of action verbs. Sorry, Sasha. And I don't know if critically is there, but they just give you an example, a couple of examples. So analyze. So from a semantics point of view, remember we spoke about semantics? So look at that first sentence there. It says critically discuss the current state of global political economy and what impact this is having on the international businesses. So what are our action verbs there, Bianca, in that statement? Right? Right, an impact. So straight away, even if we don't know what the question's about, we can hone in on those action verbs. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. Now do you understand what I said in the morning? When you come into the module in the morning and you open up your module and you go through the PMA, because now you're starting with the end. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, so you pick up on those action verbs. Now you can ask Prof. Ben or Richard, or whoever your facilitator is, what do you mean by critically discuss? Do you want us to do this, this, and this, and this? Not first thing in the morning, but obviously as the module goes on, maybe it's a 2-day module, maybe after the end of the first day and maybe beginning of the second day, you can say, what do you mean by this particular term? What do you mean by impact? Do you mean we must discuss this, this, and this, and this? Or do you want this particular avenue? Does that make sense, guys? And that's what they mean by understanding your action verbs. Look at the next one. It says, why don't you read for me, please, Rafielba?
Acknowledging your understanding of self, write an essay to define self as related to learning style differences and apply the concepts related to reframing. Right. Now, what is the action verb there, Martin? The first action verb. Define. Define. Now, if you go to your action verbs, page 21 of 44,
What does define tell you? Moe, why don't you read for us, please?
This requires a short and concise description of the meaning of a specific word, concept, or idea. Where possible, elements are specified and explained by means of examples. Where necessary, similarities and contrasts between the word, concept, or idea and other related words, concept, or ideas are spelled out.
Isn't that lovely, guys? Okay, so this is a lovely working document. So when you're writing your PMA, if you get to an action verb and you say, you know what, they haven't given us a word for this particular action verb, don't panic. You can pick up a dictionary and you can look through it and you can say, okay, what do they want us to do here? And then also when you get to your facilitator, say to your facilitator, what do you want from this particular question? For your idea of critically, remember semantics? What do you want us to do in this particular section? Does that make sense, guys? Everyone okay? Joe? You okay with that? Does that make sense? So understanding the purpose of the assignment through action verbs. So I don't know if you want to put on that slide, page 21 of 44. That's where your action verbs are. Not all of them, just some action verbs, just to give you an idea. Step 2, planning and developing an outline for the assignment. Who battles with this stage? I do. I battle as well. Why do we battle? Okay, why do you battle, Sasha, at this stage?
Because I'm not certain whether certain things would actually be appropriate. I don't know if it should go part of my conclusions or sometimes part of my body.
Okay. And who else falls into that same boat? How do you overcome that?
Well, I think of where I should start, and once I start, or where I have an idea, I plan it out. And
Okay.
then I figure out what goes in my body and what
Okay. You know what? That's great if it works for you. You know what works for me? I just write, and it's totally disjointed and totally illogical, and I read it again and again and again, and then I start to formulate a response. You with me? So that's step 2. Often people don't know where to start with the planning, but just put pen to paper. Once you put pen to paper, don't you find that it starts to flow? Haven't you been there before? I've been there plenty of times. Okay, you battle. And another big thing with this, haven't you also noticed who runs or exercises or cooks or, has got a passion somewhere else? Haven't you found when you're studying or you're battling with a particular problem, if you just break away from that environment, maybe you get on a bicycle or go swim or go for a walk or cook something or do something that you're passionate about, all of a sudden you start thinking, you say, hang on a second, I didn't think about that. Or maybe you're listening to the radio. Maybe you're standing at the bar with your buddies. And the one guy says, geez, like, did you hear on 702? They had a guest speaker and they were talking about the economics and this particular chap spoke about America, and you say, I can use that in my assignment. Go home, you Google it, you get the person's name, Google it, and you can use it in your assignment. So the point I'm making there, if you're battling with that step 2, maybe you just need a break. But you can't break too much, eh? And then get to the last day and say, oh, I've broken too much. Now, the deadline's come and gone. Okay. Step 3, writing the assignment. Another difficult one, because often if we're battling with step 2, we haven't got much time with step 3. Okay. Everyone okay with that? Any questions? Look at the stages of the writing process at the bottom there. The first one is pre-writing. The next one's drafting, revising, and editing. And to come back to what Brandon said, do you see why I said sometimes I start with pre-writing? In other words, start with formulating the response even before the pre-writing. Okay? But you have to find what works for you. All right, guys, remember, I don't know if you remember doing this at school, but we got 2 basic forms of sources. What was the first source? I see everyone reading like this.
Primary and secondary.
Right, primary and secondary. Can you remember primary and secondary? Marianne, what was primary? Who can help Marianne? Martin?
Where you get your information or where it all comes from.
Where it all comes from. So a book.
Yeah, it should be.
A book that dates back maybe 50 years ago that's written on 3000 BC. Is that a primary source? So what is a primary source, Moe?
It's a first-hand experience or something.
A first-hand experience. And a first-hand experience is always unbiased and it's your most accurate source, correct? Correct, eh? Be very careful. Think of Hitler. Think of apartheid. I could have a first-hand account, but I could be indoctrinating people. Think of Hitler. There were lots of first-hand accounts, but it depends on how you interpreted that particular event. So just because it's a primary source, I'm not saying that primary sources aren't reliable. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying as an academic, not that you need to question it, but just remember to try and resource as much as possible so you get different viewpoints. Have you got me? So that when you formulate your response is more accurate. Remember ARC? Accuracy. Okay. Does that make sense, Mu? Okay. So a primary source is a first-hand account of the information you are seeking. Example, a newspaper article written at the time, government documents, an interview, eyewitness accounts. Do you see why I'm saying it's not always a reliable source? Because even if it's an eyewitness account, does it mean that it's reliable? I'm not asking you to answer the question. I'm just asking you to ask the question. Does it mean it's reliable? Sasha? Not necessarily. Okay. Right. Secondary source. Why don't you read for me, please, Pierre?
Is a secondary account of the information you are seeking. Example, books or articles written by someone who is analyzing any primary sources and secondary sources. You can also use the library and internet.
And internet. And DaVinci, don't mind if you use Wikipedia, correct? Wikipedia is a perfect example of a source material that you can go to and you can quote in your assignment, correct? No. Wikipedia, you cannot use it. You can use Wikipedia just to get a brief overview, but don't use it as a referencing source, guys, because it's unreliable. Remember, I can go on as a non-academic, as a non-authority figure in a particular, and I can change certain things immediately on the computer. And all of a sudden, you reading it as being factual. So just be careful of internet sites like Wikipedia. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Right. Primary source and secondary source, and underneath that, if you want to, what you can add there is you can add indoctrination and bias. Remember, is this reader trying to indoctrinate other readers? Sorry, this writer trying to indoctrinate other readers? Is there bias in this material? Okay, all of those things. You need to challenge the material that you're reading. So that's an important one. Look at that first one. It says locating source material. Where do you locate some of your source material, Emmanuel? Research. And where does your research start? Brandon? Libraries. Sasha? Google? Martin? Google? Sasha? Google?
Yeah, I can also ask someone.
Guys, these things, listen all the time. When you at a bra, when you're listening to the radio, they might Jenny Chris Williams 702. When you pick up the newspaper, read the newspaper. Who's got DSTV here? DSTV. Have you ever been onto the News 24 section? Go onto it every single morning. News 24, go onto the business section and world. It gives you a brief overview and you can say, hang on a second, you know what, I can use that in my economics. I can use that in my global environment for business. It's pertinent, it's real today. Okay, does that make sense, guys? So try and get into a habit, something that's become, that you're going to make habitual for yourself. And then evaluate that source material. Remember when we said over or under explanation of source material? So if you under-explain something, it means that you've got too much. So then you need to evaluate. What am I going to include and what am I going to exclude? And that's a difficult thing. Processing source material, well, what I've just said. What am I going to include and what am I going to exclude? But I told you we use Harvard style of referencing. And this is an example, guys. Now, this is what I meant to... This is what I meant when I said to you, I don't even know how to write it. I pick up and I copy. There's nothing wrong with that. From a referencing point of view, you don't have to know it off by heart. We don't expect that of you. It's in front of you here. So from a Harvard style of referencing, all you do is Sherman, comma D. What is that?
Surname
and the initial of who? Of the author, right. And sound. What does this and mean? Co-author. In other words, in this particular book, there were two authors. Then you put and sound, okay? And look at the full stop, guys. Now that's, you might think that it's a little bit pedantic, but it's very, very important because that's correct referencing. Remember ARC? Accurate. So just give it to me. Accurate, rigorous, and the last one, consistent. So you can't put one full stop there and then the next one leave the full stop out. That's not consistent. Okay, so you must be consistent. 1997, what is that? The year the book was published. Very good. Green or gone? The title of the book. Look at the full stop, guys. Wakefield Press, what is that? The publishing house, okay? And Kent Town? Right. Okay, Kent Town, the location of the publishing house. So in other words, where the book was published. Okay. Makes sense, guys? And does anybody watch the program on DSTV? My boy and I love it. I'm going to watch your eyes now. Porn Stars. Anybody love? Okay, do you like it as well? And whenever I say to people, I let my 9-year-old boy watch Porn Stars, they go, oh! And I say, no, not that porn. You see semantics? Porn, you know, it's P-A-W-N. Have you watched it before? It's an unbelievable program. And they often get very old books in. And that's very, very important. The publication house, because you get first and second editions and sometimes third and fourth editions, and depending on where it was first published, that can determine the value of a particular book. Okay, so because it'll tell you whether it's a first edition or a second edition or whatever. Okay, right. Elements for referencing a journal. Well, guys, I'm not going to go through it, but there it is. It's in front of you. So if you're referencing a journal, you don't have to pick up the phone and say, Richard, oh, I don't know how to reference a journal. It's in front of you. You just copy it verbatim. Easy. Well, okay. So remember, we only use this. We're making it easier for you guys. You don't have to look and decide on what referencing tool you're going to use. You're using which referencing method? Harvard style. The Harvard style of referencing. Okay. Can I move on, guys? Portia, you okay? Questions? Yes? Let's, yeah?
I was wondering if you're referencing, say there's 2 editions of the same book. So one came out in 2005, one came out in 2007, for instance. But you're referencing a bit of both. So you're referencing 2005 and 2007, for instance. How do you...
If the book has changed that much, that you're using... No, but if you're using, because your words were that you're using both books. Yeah. So in other words, the book has changed a lot then.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you would have to put both books in. So, because remember, say for example, you're talking about tax laws. Yeah. Definitely, there would be big change. So then you'd have to put the complete reference for 2010, complete reference for 2011. If it has changed that much, and that happens with law books, with tax books, that type of thing, then you would have to put the whole reference in. You can't just say 2010 and 2011. You would have to, because there might be different authors for the 2010 book as opposed to 2011. Okay, it's a good question though.
With books, though, I see in this journal it's got pages, it's got the volume 51, number 1, page 40. Would you have to do the same with when we're referring to the book as well?
We're going to get to that. I'm glad Brandon's thinking about that, because basically what Brandon's talking about, he's talking about in-text referencing, correct? So if you pick up a page and maybe you're using a particular book, so in your reference list, your actual bibliography, you're going to have it like this, correct? But say for example you're citing a sentence, then it'll be in-text referencing. And I'm going to show you how to do that now, because then you don't have to write this whole thing in text. This will only pick up in your reference, because then as a reader, I'm reading and I say, okay, Brandon said according to Joe Black, open inverted commas, G Black, P 9 to 10. Then I can go to his reference list and I can say which book was this taken from, and I can pick it up straight away in his reference list. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's in-text referencing. So in this particular one, you don't have to put page numbers. But this one here, you were using a journal, and this person only used those pages. This article was only included those pages, so then that's why a page number was given. Okay, but in your reference list, you don't have to say, I use page 1, page 2, because that'll be in your text. Okay, does that make sense, guys? If it doesn't, it'll make sense on the next 2 slides. Elements for referencing in text. In text, in your assignment. So not after. Okay. So one author, Black, look at that, Black, comma, 2009, colon, 12. What does 12 mean? Page. 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 Okay. So this particular one, now this is where the confusion comes in. A lot of people say to me, Richard, if you look on the internet, Harvard style of referencing, over there, where it's got 12, they've got a P12. And sometimes they've got a P12 dot at the end. Guys, we're not going to be too worried about that. Okay? As long as, what is ARC again? Accurate, consistent, and rigorous. So as long as you are consistent, so if you put a P there, the next one you can't leave the P out. You need to use the same referencing style throughout, the same Harvard referencing style. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Okay, this one here, black and white, comma, 2010, colon 12. Black and white, 2010, states that, or state that. 3 or more authors, black, white, and green. Thereafter, black et al. Does that make sense? Have you seen et al? It just means black and others.
Okay.
Okay.
That's for if you reference the same one twice.
Sasha?
Black and others. When you say black and et al, is that if you said black, white, and green previously in your
No. It's it's not that at all. It's when there's more than 3 authors. So sometimes you open up a book and they say this book was compiled by the following authors, and there might be 10 authors. And you can't list every single author in your in-text reference. So you just say the first author, black et al. And then in your reference list, I will look there and I'll say, okay, who are the other authors, and I can maybe go there. Okay, and I can look at that. Okay. Right. Portia chatted about, yes.
Let's go back to that.
Yes.
That second, where it says there after black 2009-12, or black et al.
Yes.
What is the explanation there? Are you saying that?
No, basically what they're saying is that if you've, let's say you've given a direct quote, open inverted commas, close inverted commas, and then that, black et al. Or you want to use black et al. In your actual sentence. Then you will say black et al. Open brackets 2009-12 state that You see, so it's giving a that's it. Okay, so that's 2 ways of giving in-text referencing. Does that make sense, Joe? Answer your question?
Okay. What if there's 2 different authors that wrote 2 different books but are saying the same thing? Then you have to put both authors separately.
According to, okay, so there's one author and another author, so let's call it black and white. Okay, so according to black, open inverted commas, date, page number, and white, open inverted commas, 2008, page number, close, state that, because then I can say, hang on a second, I can't believe that these 2 authors said the same thing. I can pick it up and I can say, oh, actually they did, I didn't know that. Okay, and I learn things. That's a lovely thing about marking assignments as well, is that you learn things all the time. Okay, but it's a good question as well. Have I answered your question? Okay. Right. This is what Portia spoke about this morning, where we said it's so simple, but do we forget it? We do, guys. And remember, this is the editing process. So what should be in the introduction? Martin? What you're introducing, what you're going to be? Pierre? Overview of your work. And what is always nice to include in an introduction? Definition. Yes, I suppose it's pertinent to the work that you're going to be writing about. I like other things. I'm thinking about a good quote. Haven't you ever read something and you pick up and there's a lovely quote and it actually brings you in and you actually want to read about this? Because there's a powerful quote from Mandela, or I don't know, Barack Obama, or some powerful person, Gandhi, or something like that, and you thought, hang on a second, I didn't know Gandhi had anything to do with economics, and it draws you into the actual work. So don't forget, never ever underestimate the use of a powerful quote. Make sense, guys? Okay. So a nice quote there, very, very important. And here as well, a nice quote to bring everything together. It's also very nice to include that in your assignment as well. You know, I've had some learners as well who have made use of cartoon strips. And they've actually chatted around cartoon strips, and it's actually worked very well. Be careful, it can be risky, but it can actually work well. You know, where you get in the economic section or finance section or global section, you get some cartoon strips. You can actually chat about that as well. And it just gives a different dynamic to your actual work, and it makes it academic as well. And at the same time, it's a little bit comical. Okay, makes sense? Right, and then body. Headings and subheadings, so important. I can't tell you how many times I get assignments where they've got like a table of contents, no page numbers, and then it's just the body. You're laughing at me, it happens all the time. Okay, body, and it's just, there it is, and I have to kind of sieve through it. It's totally disjointed, there's no logical format. How do you solve that problem, Portia?
Reviewing it again.
Who?
Get somebody else to review
Get
it.
somebody else to review it again. Okay, get somebody else. Even if you think, haven't you ever written something and you think, geez, like I've nailed that test, or I've really done so well, and you get it back and you're like failed, or got like 50%. Has that happened to you before? It's happened to me. Okay, where you think, geez, I really knew that well. And it comes back and you think, oh, you didn't do that well. Your kid comes home and he says, oh, no, I got all of them right. You think, oh, tomorrow's coming. I know what's going to happen. Okay, it happens all the time because we think we've done the right thing, but somebody else hasn't edited our work for us. Make sense, Sasha? Keep on looking at me like I'm not like I'm talking nonsense. So if I'm talking nonsense, you must please tell me, eh?
So Richard, say for instance, if I go back to that PMA assignment,
yes,
and that we had basically it was three alternatives in the first question.
Yeah,
so that would be three different bodies in terms of heading for each one to discuss it.
Brandon brings up a very, very good question. Did everyone hear the question? So what Brandon's saying is, say for example, I'm sorry, I'm always fiddling with my ear. Brandon's saying if your section out of 70 is made up of 3 questions, do we need a separate introduction and a separate conclusion for each one? My answer is yes. Yes. But that's a question you can ask the facilitator in the beginning. For all of my PMAs, I like that. Because I'll give you a perfect example. The one assignment I was marking this morning was finance. Eesh. I don't know what's happening with this thing, but was no. I think it's all right. Here we go. It's finance. Now it's a section out of 30 and a section out of 40 and a section out of 30, and the section out of 40 is on the 4 key financials. The section out of 30 is on budgets. Yes, there is correlation between the two, but you have to write the one, finish it, and then start the next one. So you need to have a separate introduction and conclusion for the first section and a separate introduction and conclusion for the second one. So that's a very, very good question that Brandon's brought up there. And a lot of people say, yeah, but I had an introduction, now I've got a conclusion. But there's 3 sections, and the sections are totally different. They're not really interrelated. Okay, then you need to have separate introductions and conclusions. Okay, formulate it as one response. Does that make sense? Sure. Okay. Thank you for that, Brandon. That's a very good question. Any other questions? Simpiwe, you all right?
No.
Okay. Right, this is a lovely slide. Lovely, lovely slide. When you're doing your assignment, have this in front of you. And you can basically say, you know what, have I done all of these things correctly? Or have I fallen into any of these traps? So I'm going to go through it quite quickly. But look at the first one. It says, write clearly and directly. Now you might say, oh, Richard, you know what, we're not children. But how often do we write clearly and directly? I make that mistake all the time. I think I've written clearly and directly. Somebody picks it up and says, Richard, I don't know what you're saying. We need to be open to that criticism. Okay. So have I written clearly and directly? How do we answer that question for ourselves? Nontombi? How do we answer the question? Have I written clearly or directly? How do I answer that question? Thank you, Simpiwe. Give it to somebody else. They'll tell you straight away, I don't know what you're saying here. Okay. Avoid colloquialisms and slang. The paper was awful. Apartheid was awful. Yes, we know that, but stick away from that emotive language. Adjectives, yes. Okay, be careful of those. Okay. The paper was poorly researched or the paper was unsubstantiated. Back it up with factual information. Okay. Sequence thoughts and ideas logically. Organize a plan or outline before you write. Remember, that's coming back to that pre-writing process. Okay. Avoid too much specific subject jargon. So what they're saying there is, remember I spoke about semantics and words that Prof. Ben will use, or maybe global environment for business, they pick up on certain terms. Don't use those terms again. It's good to use them once or twice in your assignment because then the marker can pick up straight away. Hang on a second, Brandon's definitely got the idea what we were talking about when we spoke about globalization. He knows what we're talking about there. He's identified that particular definition. But don't use it again and again and again. Okay, so that's when they talk about too much subject-specific jargon. Another problem there that I've picked up is subject-specific jargon. If you write, everybody know what mode 2 is? You can tell me what mode 2 is? Give me a brief overview of mode 2, please, Ntombi. Mode 2 learning. Have you learned about, did Prof. Ben do this with you yesterday? I'm sure he did. experiential learning. Okay, so it's learning that you can take back into the workplace. So it's not just opening up this book, learning all 150 pages off heart. You write the exam, you get 100%, you're very happy, and 2 days later you've forgotten everything. Can you remember? That's how I went. Most of my schooling was like that. I think you guys as well. Who did the great track at school? Come on, great track. We did it again and again. Can you remember anything about it? I can't remember anything, unfortunately, because it wasn't really mode 2 learning. It was repetitive learning. So the reason why I bring that up is because avoid too much subject-specific jargon. When it's mode 2 learning, it's very meaningful to me, correct? So you might be working in a department and maybe you've got a DTM, correct? A DTM, you know what that is. And an ADS, correct? You know what that is. And a BTE. Have I lost you? I've lost myself a long time ago. But that's what happens in assignments. People are writing about their particular department and they say to me, in our BTE, we were doing ADMs, and I'm thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's not that I'm stupid, it's because you haven't defined those particular acronyms or those abbreviations for me. So that's subject-specific jargon as well. Just be aware of that. If you're going to use the abbreviation AGM, just say AGM, and in brackets, give it to me, and then after that, you can use that abbreviation again. Okay? Just because you know what you're talking about doesn't mean I know what you're talking about, okay? So that's subject-specific jargon. Using the third person, not I think that all guns should be banned. There is a case for stricter control of guns. Isn't that more academic? It just sounds better, correct? But with that said, can I just put that in and leave it at that, Brandon? There is a case for stricter control on guns. Because it's very opinionated, correct? It's very opinionated. If I want to say that, and that is my opinion, and I want to state it from an academic point of view, how can I back up that statement? Bianca? Referencing what? Some theory, some stats, some factual information. I don't know, maybe in the last, hopefully not, but maybe in the last week, 10,000 people have been killed by guns. And maybe that's a stat. It's a fact. Nobody can argue that. It's a factual statement. Is that powerful? It's very, very powerful. And it backs up that particular statement. Correct? So it's my opinion, and I've used factual information to back up that statement. Does that make sense, Bianca? Okay. Right. Avoid the double negative. Well, we often do this. I make this mistake as well. The analysis did not yield any new. Look at that. Did not and any new. The analysis yielded no new results. Do you see that? And often we say the analysis did not yield any new. So it's a double negative. And how are we going to pick this up? Because often it's difficult to pick these things up by the editing process. Give it to other people to edit for you. I'm not going to read through all of them. Are you happy with that? Okay. We're still on time. Right. Avoid cautious or tentative language. Seems or tends or appears. Don't you think that the person sitting on the fence there? There seems to be a case for stricter gun control. Guys, it's wishy-washy, correct? You want very powerful words there. What type of word should you use? States, contends, okay? Or there is a need. It's more forceful. Makes sense, guys? Okay. Right. Avoid system crashing. Oh, this happens as well. Not too often, but it does happen. I get a phone call. So Charlie phones me and she's crying and she says, oh, I was working on my assignment and I got to the last page and I was just about to put the full stop and poof. And there goes my assignment. Okay? That's what we mean by system crashing, because that happens, guys. You need to back up your work. Don't just back it up once. Who's had a laptop being stolen? Okay, unfortunately that can happen as well. Okay, so, and believe me, I've tried. You go to SARS and you say to SARS, I had everything, I was going to submit it, and now my laptop's stolen. They say, sorry, if it's late, you're getting penalized. Okay, so we need to back up. We need to back up those that work, okay? Make use of bullets. Are bullets a good thing? What do we mean by bullets? Bullet points. Okay, bullet points. Not bullets in a gun, but bullet points. So it just brings the reader and it helps to synthesize things. But with that said, is meat good for you? Is meat good for you, Brandon? Yes, in moderation. The same with bullets. Don't just open up the assignment and there's just bullets from start to end. Because then it's avoid bullet point kill, and that's the next point. So use bullets, but don't use too many of them. When is too many too many? I can hear some people asking that question. Your editing process will help you with that. Okay, editing process will help you with that. Avoid death by boredom. I love that one. Okay, what is it? What are we talking about there? When you haven't researched enough, you've picked up on 2 or 3 points and you're repeating it again and again and again. Okay, keep your assignment, your PMA, interesting. Use active instead of passive voice. What do we mean by that? Active, the boy rode the bicycle, not the bicycle was ridden by the boy. You see how pedantic that sounds? Okay, right. Guys, this slide, very briefly, it's just to tell you from an academic point of view, you can't go choose the font that you want to choose and make it all fairy and have little flowers in the top. It's academic, it's not creative, we're not at school, correct? Okay, so I'm not going to give you marks for florally work. Okay, Joe? Right, I can see Joe saying, oh, shucks, man, I wanted to put those flowers in and everything. Right, so what are we talking about there? Very easily, or quickly put 12 to 11. What are we talking about there? The size. Tell me if you don't know what I'm talking about. Do you know the font size? And what font are we using? Look at that. Sorry. Arial or Calibri. Nothing else, guys. Not Times New Roman. Yes, Verdana, they do as well. Have they included that in your? Okay. They're updating all the time. So Verdana, I don't mind. I write in Verdana as well. So Verdana, Calibri, and Arial. And the size 12 to 11, because I know straight away I could see what Emmanuel was thinking as well. He was thinking, oh, well, Richard says this next assignment has to be 10 pages long. So what I'll do is I'll just take 12 and 11, I'll push it up to 23, and I'll be finished my assignment, chop, chop, eh? Okay, guys, we know all of the tricks, eh? So you can't push it up to 14 or 16 or whatever to try and make your assignment a little bit shorter, but look longer. Okay, it's not going to work. And that justification as well. You can't change that justification 1.5 to maybe 10. So when I read the words, I go, and the boy. Okay, to make it longer. You laugh, it happens, eh? Okay, everybody okay with that slide? I'm going to spend too much time on it, okay? But basically, 11 and 12, that's your font size, Arial, Verdana, and Calibri. Okay. Right, that's basically telling you again from a bullet point of view, from a caption point of view. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I want to get onto your assignment. Everyone okay with that? Okay. Right, and then this is a lovely slide. I always say to the learners, have this slide in front of you once you've finished your assignment. So it says 13 common errors that all of us, guys, master students, PhD students, we often fall into these traps. So we need to just be aware of them. Okay, so the first one, it says lack of agreement. Now, look how lovely this module is. Can I ask, Muir, why don't you just give me your... If you look at that slide, and I want you to open up onto page 25 of 44. So if you don't mind, just keep your slide in front of you. And look how lovely this is. Just go back, and the first one says lack of agreement. You see that, guys? Lack of agreement. And if you go to page 25 of 44, it says faulty agreement. You see that? And it explains and defines faulty agreement. Isn't that lovely? Okay, so I don't know if on that slide you want to put page 25 of 44. Now, if you go to page 25, it says faulty agreement. Let's just look at some examples. Why don't you read for me the first one, please, Sashalia?
A, subjects and verbs must agree in their number. Recent discoveries about the weather reveals that several cycles are involved. That's one. And then the right one is recent discoveries about the weather reveal that several cycles are involved. And the next one is the media was biased in its reporting of the event, and the correct one is the media were biased in their reporting of the event.
Look at that second one. The media was biased and the media were biased. Why is that so incorrect, that first one?
Because it's reported already, it's a past tense.
Mm-mm. No. No. Right. Media is how many groups? How many groups do you get with media? There's lots. So if you say the media was, which media? The Star, the television, whatever. The media were. So you're grouping them together because there's many groups that make up the media. Okay, so it's things like that that you have to be aware of. You see how you have to be on your toes there. Look at the next one. Nouns and pronouns must agree in number as well. A student is free to express their opinion. A student is free to express his or her opinion. A student is one. There is plural. You can't have one to plural. You have one to one, which is his or her. Okay, guys, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but you see how the slide works. So look at the next one. It says sentence fragments. Go to page 25. It says sentence fragments. All of these rules and regulations should be made aware of. Athletes should be made aware of all of these rules and regulations. What happens there is sometimes we've got so much information and we've only got 10 pages to write in, so we start synthesizing too much, and that's when we get sentence fragments. Okay, and it leads to disjointedness of the sentence structure as well. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Look at the next one. Overly long sentences. I'm not going to read an example. You got your examples there, but we all of us have fallen in this particular trap before, where we've got these sentences and we've maybe got 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 subjects in one sentence. What do we need to do? Break it up. Break it up with a full stop. It just helps the reader. It helps the flow of your document. Make sense, Bianca? Okay. With that said, overuse of passive voice. What was the passive? What was the other voice we should be using? Active. Do you want to go through one of those, or are you guys okay with that? Let me hear from class. Anybody wants to go through one? Let's just go through one. It says that it is through this essay that the proposed benefits of active exercise for chronic lower back pain, CLBP, will be explained. This essay will examine the proposed benefits of active exercise for chronic lower back pain. So it just puts the subject first. Makes sense, guys? Okay. And it's not as pedantic. It's easier to understand, it's more direct, and it's simple. Right, faulty parallels. Look at that one. Eating huge meals, snacking between meals, and too little exercise can lead to obesity. It says eating huge meals, snacking between meals, and exercising too little can lead to obesity. Our coach, I love this next one, our coach is paid too much, obese, over 40, and a former champion wrestler. Our coach is a former champion wrestler, but now he's overpaid, overweight, and over 40. You see, it just makes it better. What's going to help you there? Editing process once again. Okay. You see what I'm saying? Just sit with your assignment once you've done it with this in front of you and read through your assignment and say, have I fallen into any of these traps? Vague pronouns, dangling modifiers. Well, if you don't know what dangling modifiers are, because I didn't know, look at that first one. It says make sure that a modifying phrase or clause has something to modify, so you don't leave it in midair. By manipulating the lower back, the pain was greatly eased. This implies that the pain was doing the manipulation. Do you see that, guys? And you should rather write it, by manipulating the lower back, the therapist greatly eased the pain, not the pain. You with me? The therapist was doing the manipulating. Squinting modifiers, more or less same type of thing. Mixed or dead metaphors. I love this one. Just look at that. It says like a bolt from the blue. The idea grabbed him and it soon took its place as one of his hobby horses. It's a little bit like creative writing, correct? It should rather be the idea excited him as soon as he heard of it, and it soon became an obsession. Isn't that more direct and clear? Okay. Right, and then faulty word choice, faulty diction. Remember, that's also translating directly from one particular language into another, and also trying to we want to use words that we actually don't understand the meanings of, and this is actually a lovely example of it. It says that it's evidence that this term is associated with much ambiguity. Many concepts and ideas come to mind upon first hearing the phrase. However, a true grasp of its meaning is quite difficult to establish despite this ambiguity. A definition that can be employed usefully according to, you see, it's very, very over the top, guys. Laplante et al. States that. It's so much more direct and more to the point. Okay, I just wanted to pick up on faulty word choice as well. Explaining the rationale for treatment can help distill patients' fears. What's the problem with that? Right. We distill whiskey, correct? Or alcohol. We don't distill fears, we dispel fears. So once again, the person, you can see they're not feeling comfortable with the language that they're writing in, and they're trying to make use of these big words or words that they don't truly understand. Just remember those first two words that we read? Keep it, write clearly and directly. Write clearly and directly, just keep it simple. With that said, we want you to grow your vocab. We want you to grow your vocab. So if you hear a good word or whatever, use it in your assignment. But don't try and sound verbose by using all of these big fancy words. Okay. Right. The next one, wordiness, we spoke about comma splices. Well, comma splices. I went to the shop and bought sweets, comma, bread, comma, oranges, comma, 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 comma. Why? Because I'm trying to take up pages. Emmanuel's laughing. I know you're laughing. Eh? But you can't do that, guys. I went to the shop and bought groceries. Okay, group that all together. Sorry, I'm picking on you today. Eh? Right. Everyone okay with that? And then misuse of comma, semicolon, or colon. Don't misuse that. Okay, but it's a lovely module because you can go to it. Do you see how you can work with it there, guys? Lovely module to use. User-friendly module. Okay. Right, now if you look at the next slide, it says it doesn't stay on. Annexure D, E, and F is American spelling and British spelling. How do we not fall into this boat when we're writing a PMA and we spell differently? What do we just set our spell check at? American spelling or British spelling? British. Write it down. Set your spell check to British. So when you see color, what will the color be spelled as? Spell color for me. British color.
Is it C-O-L-O-U-R?
Right. Spell American color for me, please. Right, okay, it's simple things like that. Program, 1M, 2Ms. Just use the British spelling. Remember the ARC? Accurate, rigorous, and consistent. So you can't use British spelling and then American spelling. With that said, if it's a direct quote from an American book and they've used color, C-O-L-O-R, then you have to put it in because it's not your words, you're taking a direct quote out of a book. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, right. And then those are annexures D. E is wordy and old-fashioned phrases. I love that little handout as well. Page 31 of 40, guys. We're on page 31 of 40. Just look there. And it says, at this point in time. Sounds like J.K. Rowling. Eh? This point in time. Just say now. Now. Okay. I'll just go down the page. I'm not going to read through all of them. I wish to take this occasion to express my thanks. Thank you. Just say thank you. Okay, and if you read through it, you can actually laugh. You actually end up laughing because we do. And when we were at school, we were taught to write like this, correct? So it's just be very, very aware of that. Just turn the page here, please. And then it says prepositions. Let's talk about it. There is no doubt about this guilt. So just using prepositions about. Across, Peter is walking across the street. Now I know this sounds very oversimplified, guys, but we make mistakes with these words. So just read through this when you're at home. Okay. And if you turn over the page again from the prepositions one, you get to during, from, of, and this is going to help you with your PMA that you're going to do now. And within and without. Now, you guys, I'm left with about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and I want some time just to spend on your PMA. You know you are doing a PMA for this, correct? What is your PMA about? Anybody know? Okay. A report, correct? Have you read through it? When you got into the class this morning, did you read through it, Brandon? No. Not yet, okay. But next module, you're definitely going to have read through it, correct? Okay. I just want to go through this slide as well, just before we finish. I read a few books and saw that. The data indicates that. This is a lovely slide as well. Because I find that I often say the same thing. I read a few books and saw that. If you find that particular phrase coming up in your PMA again and again, look at this slide and say, hang on a second, how else can I write that? I can actually say the data indicates that. That sounds more academic, correct? And it's clear and it's simple. So it's a lovely slide to go through as well. I think we must apply these ideas. Look at the emotive language. I think. Okay, it is worthwhile to consider. Certain PMAs will call for I thinks and your recommendations. Then you're going to say I think or I feel, but back it up. But if you tend to say that all the time, rather write it like that. It was worthwhile to consider. Makes sense, Nontombi? Okay, look at the next one. They all think, I think we must look at these suggestions. Several possibilities emerge. They all think we can solve the problem like this. A common solution could be. Not is, could be. Because if I say is, it's indoctrination, correct? And it's bias. It's my opinion that I'm trying to force onto people. It's not a common solution. Yet, it's a possible common solution. Okay. They say we must do it, sorry, not to it, do it like this. There is a tendency for this particular problem to be solved in this way. I think this suggestion is nonsense. It would seem that this suggestion holds little value or little merit. I've looked at these facts and I think that from these facts it can be deduced that. Doesn't it sound better? So when you're reading through this, even when you pick up books and that, be honest with me. Who doesn't enjoy reading? Thanks, Martin. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you. Go home, pick up a book and read. Read different styles. Put on DSTV when you're sitting down. Instead of watching the rugby, change it to News 24 and read. No, I'm just joking. That's going to kill you. Huh? But every now and again, before the rugby starts, go on to News 24. Go on to News 24 and just catch up on the world. Because the more styles of writing that you read, the better your language, your vocab is going to get, and the better your writing is going to get as well. And then you read something and say, I really don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the ANC. I agree with the DI. I don't agree with the DI. I agree with that. It's not that you're being political. No, you are being political, but it's also you're formulating your own ideas. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Okay, and don't just accept things at face value. Right, I love this last slide. Don't agonize, write. Remember we chatted about that? So don't sit and say, oh I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh, let me go jump in the pool. Tomorrow comes, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what, I'm going to Sun City. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then next thing, deadline's there and you haven't submitted your assignment and you lose 5 marks. Okay, let it bubble. I like that one. So if you are battling, get out on your bike, go for a run, go for a walk. Go go play with your child, go cook, do whatever. Just break that environment because that's when we start to learn as well. And then read it out aloud. That's, I don't know who's done this before. I've done it once or twice where I've thought of something, I thought, yes, that sounds great. You go to a mirror or something, you start reading, you think, it's like, that sounds terrible. Because in here it sounds great, correct? But when you start reading it out loud, it sounds terrible. And what does that tell you? You need to edit it more. Explain it to somebody. Whoa. And then when they look at you like Sasha Lee just looked at me, then you know, hang on a second, there's no logical content here. Okay. Stretch your mind. Like that one. Stretch your mind. What does that mean? Read different sources. Research. Don't just research from Google. Or I know Google will give you a lot of different resources, but don't just resource from one particular book. Get different opinions and then formulate your own opinion. Make sense? Take a walk, very important, and look at the clouds. What do we mean by that? If you can't get anywhere with your assignment, take a break from it. Just get into another environment. Okay, make sense, guys? Right. And that's basically the end of the slideshow. But what I want to get to now is I want to get to your PMA. So I want you just to open up your PMA, please. And you can tell me if I was talking nonsense because I said to you every single PMA would be 70 and then the other points would be out of. Now this assignment is the only one, so I'm going to have to contradict myself here. It's the only assignment that hasn't got that 70-30 split. You see that? Because it's just an introductory PMA. So you'll see there's a mark out of 50. Then everything, so literally this one isn't 70-30, this one's 50-50. Your PMA is just before, it's in the beginning of page 7, guys. The second page, sorry Sasha, second page of 7. Just after 7, second page. You see it there? Okay, do you see that, guys? Remember I said to you all PMAs will be broken up into 70-30 split. This one's 50-50 split. So it's a very, guys, I'm going to state categorically on camera here, it's very difficult to fail this assignment. Honestly, it really is. Because all we're doing is we're just testing your understanding of the content that we've done today, and we're giving you an article, and there's not much else, not much more research that you actually need to do. Okay, I want you to research, but it's actually based, it's mode 2 learning, it's based on your work environment. We're going to go through it now. I can see Brandon already reading through the first part of the assignment, which is good. And what are you trying to pick up, Brandon?
Action verbs.
Excellent, well done. I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Read through the first part of the assignment. Tell me the first action verb that comes to you. Sorry, Emmanuel. There we go. First action verb? Sasha? Write. Write. So you have to write a report. Joe, can I ask you to read, please, the first section?
You need to write a report to the senior management of your organization on the impact of workforce trends on your organization. You should read the attached article on workforce trends by Coddington.
Stop there. Do you see Brandon? I don't know if Brandon asked this question earlier on. He said, no, it was Joe actually. Joe, you asked this question. You said, why was Coddington in brackets once and then out of brackets again? Yeah, they've used Coddington's name in their sentence, so it's out of the brackets. You with me? If they said workforce trends and they put in brackets Coddington 2010, then that would have also been fine. But they've put by Coddington, so Coddington's in the sentence. That's why they've only put the 2010. Okay, and it's the whole document, so that's why they haven't put a page number. Okay, carry on.
By Coddington 2010 and find and refer to 2 additional sources in your report. The report should address the following aspects: a summary of the key aspects discussed in the article by Coddington 2010, a critical analysis of the 4 workforce trends that currently have the biggest impact on your organization, 5 practical recommendations to address these trends proactively. And then note, the report should not be longer than 3 pages.
Is that difficult? It's going to be this will by far be your shortest assignment, okay? It's 3 pages long, guys, that's your assignment. And I'm going to be very strict from a marking point of view. So if it's longer than 3 pages, I'm going to have to, I will penalize you, because that's what the PMA is calling for. So what is this assignment about? It's about synthesis. And we're going to read through Graham Coddington's article now. He's an amazing guy, South African based. He actually lives here in Johannesburg. And the interesting thing about this is, what do you notice about the date that he wrote when he wrote this article? 2010. So read the article 2010, but now we're April 2013. So it's already 3 years old. How pertinent is it? Does Graham Coddington still feel the same way about this? But remember, you've only got 3 pages. So the point I'm making is that maybe you can, because they give you a website, maybe you can even go onto his website and just check, is there an update on this particular article? But it's very pertinent. When we read through it, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm going to take time to read through this article. Is everyone okay with that? We're going to read through it in class now, and I'm going to show you how simple his writing is. Okay, can I ask you please to open up work-based trends? I've got it on the computer, yeah? And you should have it, sorry Mary Ann, if I can just see.
Rich, last question.
Of course you can, Ben.
Pages. I mean, yeah, okay, yes, we'll be penalized if we go above, but I mean, in general, do we always have to stick to a certain amount of pages?
Your facilitator will guide you there, but this assignment is very specific. But the other assignments, from my point of view, look, if the person hands in like 36 or 40 pages, that then becomes a problem. But I'm not too perturbed if the person's, basically for me, it's all about quality, it's not about quantity. And some people tend to waffle and they write 40 pages, whereas other people write 15 pages and they do a very good assignment. Okay, but this assignment is very specific for 3 pages. Guys, everyone got that workbook? Just give me some idea where it is in your... After the PMA. Okay, so after the PMA. There we go. Okay, just turn the page again. I'll put it on the overhead as well. Guys, there it is there. 9 key workforce trends by Graham Coddington. And it says, at a glance, the decade ahead will see significant shifts in how we do work and how we organize our businesses and workforces. There are at least 9 key trends that will shape the next few years. Companies wanting to understand, anticipate, and benefit from the changes that lie ahead would do well to take heed of these trends. What does the word heed mean? Notice. It's not like doom and gloom. It just says take notice of these things. And it says for the next decade, so for the next 10 years. So it is still pertinent to what we're doing today. So let's have a look at it, what he says. Can I ask Brandon, why don't you read for us, please?
The 9 key workforce trends for the next decade, tracking changes in the world of work. My company, Tomorrow Today, researches the new world of work and focuses especially on helping our clients to understand the descriptive forces that will change the world in the next decade. We use a variety of constructs or frameworks to help people understand and respond to these issues. One of my favorites is our Tides of Change framework. Read an overview of the that's the
yes. And then it just says, I was recently asked to simply list some of the key workforce trends of the next decade. It was an interesting exercise, so without much explanation or detail, I'll tease these each out of you on our blog over the next few months. And it says see, and it gives you a site there. Here is a list of the most important issues we'll be facing in the next few years in relation to our employees, leaders, and teams. There are obviously some variations in different world regions, but these are fairly general. But these are fairly general trends for the next decade. Now, guys, the reason why I'm taking time to read this, what did we say? How should we start our PMA? With a quote, with the learning outcomes, yes, but how do we start with the 3 things? Not arc, introduction. Remember, introduction. Don't you think that's a clear introduction? Now, guys, this guy is a highly intelligent person. I promise you, his vocab is unbelievable. But I can understand it. Can you understand it, Martin? Because it's written in clear language. And it's simple, it's easy. So we know exactly what he's going to be talking about. What is he going to be talking about? You want to tell me? How many? 9. So we know straight away, he's identified that. He's talking about 9 key workforce trends. So let's go back to our PMA. Keep that open there. Go back to your PMA. Just keep your finger there. And it says, so we have to read the article, which is what we're doing. And the first bullet says a summary of the key aspects discussed in this article. Now, guys, I cannot tell you how many of these assignments I've marked where the people have given me 4 of the key workforce trends. Am I going to penalize them for that? Yes, because they haven't answered. What is a summary of Codrington? How many do you need to include? 9, because it says there's 9. Then 4 is only the next bullet. But the first summary is on 9. Now, guys, just quickly page through Codrington's article. How many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Correct? 4. So you have to synthesize those 9, into maybe 1 page. Because remember, you're only allowed to have 3 pages. Correct? So you're only allowed to have 3 pages. So if you synthesize into 1 page, or maybe it should even be maybe 3/4 of a page, then you've only left with 2 1/4 pages for the other 2 bullets. You with me? So you need to, your synthesizing skills are really going to be tested here. Are you happy that we read through this article? Are you happy? Anyone got a problem with reading through? It's nice to prep for the assignment. You're right. Okay. Why don't you read for me, please? More older workers. And tell me if you think this is nonsense.
Especially in the developed world, but increasingly in every market and country, we will see people delaying time and staying longer in the workforce. This may be because government change, retirement ages, or because those in the private sectors just choose to work longer. Either way, it has the same effect. There will also be more older dropping years. Luckily, there will also be an increasingly important older consumer market too.
Right, stop there. Who's got moms and dads, grannies and grandpas at home? So you don't have to put up hands, but just think about it. Who of those people are retired, but now they're starting a second job, or they may be starting a little business? Are you thinking about it?
Yeah.
Who of those elderly people are getting frustrated at home? They want to go and work. Think about it. Because the retirement age is 65. They now want to reduce it to 60. Okay? Those people have to provide for themselves. So that's what they're saying there. Is it nonsense? No, we can see it happening in our environment. Is that simple language, guys? Has he got his point across to us? You see how simple that is? So now you have to synthesize that, what he's saying there, maybe into one sentence. So there will be more older workers. There will be more older workers. Is it a valid point? Definitely it is. Now all of a sudden I'm 60 and the government is telling me that I must go on retirement, but I need to make ends meet. My number one expense is going to be what? Medical aid, most probably. I need to be able to provide for my medical aid. So how am I going to do that? By maybe getting another job. Okay, just very, very interesting point. I've got a Greek father-in-law. He's 83 years old. He still lays carpets. And he doesn't have to. He can actually sit at home and do nothing, but he wants to do it. So this is what's happening with that population. Okay. All right, guys. Nice, simple language. To the point. Easy to understand. I'm not going to read through all of it. Okay. Key skills deficits across multiple industries. And you can pick up on some of the words he uses here, guys, in your synthesis as well. Sasha, why don't you read the next one, please? Number 2.
For many years, the number of engineers has been declining, especially civil and mechanical engineers. The number of legal and accounting graduates has been increasing, but the number of jobs available for them has plummeted, leading to more and more young people working in careers with which they were never formally trained. They then moved around regularly, building breadth but not depth in their knowledge. Over the next decade, nearly 30% of American young adults will obtain a college degree, but 60% of new jobs in the US will require a degree. Right now, in Brazil, there is a demand for about 30,000 engineering graduates every year, but less than 15,000 actually qualify. In India and China, are beginning to run out of qualified workers, which will put upward pressure on salaries and remove the wage differential advantage of those countries.
Okay, so what are they saying there? They're saying that the skills, just look at the wording that he's given there. So the second workforce trend is key skills deficit. What does the word deficit mean?
Shortage.
There's a shortage of it across multiple industries. Now let's just think about it. I'm going to go across the class. You don't have to just give me a nod or who disagrees with what he's saying here. Just think about from your own personal point of view. Nobody who agrees. Okay? There's basically a consensus. If you look at it, that's a valid point from a skills deficit point of view. So now it becomes mode 2. Who's presently working here? Are all of you guys working? All of you guys are working, correct? Who's paying for their own studies sitting here? Okay, you're paying for your own studies. Who's not paying for their own studies? Okay, you see that there, that's a skills deficit across more and more companies are sending employees on basically upskilling their workforce. Why? Because they see it as being beneficial to them. You see that, guys? You also get a tax break. Nothing's for nothing, but it's part of that key skills deficit problem that we're all facing, and it's a global problem. Right. Simple language, do you agree with that? Do you already see how you're going to start synthesizing? I don't see anybody with highlighters. I see Mary Ann writing down some things. Good, because that's what I see Sasha's writing down. That's what you should be sitting with now, with a highlighter and saying, I'm going to use this word, I'm going to use that word, maybe I'm going to define this. So automatically you're already starting to formulate your PMA. Look at the next one. It says global migration. Now remember your next, correct me if I'm wrong, but your next module you do is global environment for business, global change for business, correct? You're going to do that later on this afternoon. Now, yeah, he talks about this. So yeah, we've got integration of the two modules as well. So remember when you're doing a PMA, you don't only write about professional writing. Professional writing you've only got 3 pages, so maybe you can't elaborate too much there. But when you're doing global environment for business, maybe you can use Codrington's workforce trends in that particular PMA. I'm not saying you must. I'm saying, but don't. Remember when we were at school, we went to history and we did history. We went to English and we did English. And we went to maths and we did maths. From a Mode 2 point of view, we want you to integrate all of that language together. Does that make sense, guys? So if you see something pertinent here, use it in your next module, or maybe the 3rd or 4th module as well. Okay. Right, so the third one, global migration. The migration of talent now plays a much bigger role in shaping the skilled workforce, especially for multinational companies and growth industries. Previously, the United States and Western Europe have benefited from skilled workers arriving to work and thus creating brain drains. Have you heard of that term? Brain drain in South Africa. But now the global migration of talent is happening in all directions, and the US and EU are not as attractive or as easy to enter as they used to be. Contributing to disruptions in the supply of talent will be the fact that the world will be experiencing decelerating population growth, and that 95% of population growth will be in developing countries. Also to be considered is continued net migration towards cities, while many rural areas will become depopulated. Isn't that scary, guys? I'm asking a personal question here. I don't want a response. I just want you to think about the question that I'm asking. Young people in the class who aren't married. Just show of hands. Okay? Okay? Who haven't got kids. Who of you, as I say, personal question, you don't have to put up your hand, you can if you want to. Who of you are not even deciding on having kids? Okay? There's a lot more young people who don't want children. And that's what he's saying there. He says that downgrade, look here, he uses the decelerating population growth. That's a big problem. Is that happening in China and in India? Yes. No. It's like 1.4 billion. I did a count last night. There were 1.4 billion people in China. I'm just joking. But 1.4 billion people in China, maybe 1.3 billion people in India. Okay? I heard a statement by one of my friends the other day. They said that if you're 1 in a million in South Africa, how many of you are there if you're 1 in a million in South Africa? Okay, around 50, because there's 50 million people in South Africa. Okay, so if you're 1 in a million in South Africa, are you special? You're very special. If you're 1 in a million in China, how many of you are there? There's like 1.3 million. Doesn't that put it into perspective? It's quite scary, eh? Okay, so that global migration is very, very pertinent to what we're discussing now. Is it simple language? Is it easy to understand? Has he got his point across? How has he kept it logical and synthesized his work? Bianca? Okay. Right. And Bianca brings up such a good point that we haven't really chatted about. You have to know, oh, sorry, it's just my family there. You have to know your audience. Isn't that so true? If you're going to cater a PMA for, or you're going to write a PMA for a particular group, how's it, Trishan? You have to know your audience, correct? And that's exactly what Bianca's saying. And he's kept it very simple. The language is simple and clear as well. Agreed? It's not oversimplified. But you know what else I like? Don't you also find it's very clear to understand? Why? Because he's got numbers. We know we're on point 3. It's not a bullet, it's point 3. So the third point is global migration. Look at the next point, 4. Is this helping you with your PMA, guys? Helping you, Portia? Okay. Look at the next one. Portia, can I ask you to read, please?
More women in the workplace.
Okay, this is totally wrong. This is also wrong. Just put a big line through that. I'm just joking, man. Okay, more women in the workplace, definitely. Okay, read for us.
Canada, the US, and Australia have already passed the tipping point, with more women employed than men. The UK will be there by 2012, with many European nations following suit in this decade. By the way, in Africa, the developing world, this may already be the case if you count informal workers.
Okay, just stop there. Thanks, Portia. Don't you love his writing style? Because look what he's done. He's made it so informal, and he's actually brought the reader in, and he says, by the way. Isn't that nice? It's a nice way, because it's not creative, it's not emotive, he's stating a fact. But he's brought the reader in, and he's captured your attention, and you go, wow, by the way. Thanks. Carry on, Portia. Sorry.
This decade will see continuing focus on not only bringing more female bodies into the workplace, but rather bringing a female influence as well. This might be the biggest change in corporate culture in a century if more women rise up through their management ranks, and also decide not to play the game in a testosterone-fueled business world.
Okay, testosterone-fueled business world. Who thinks that last sentence is maybe a little bit long? Maybe there's a need to shorten it a bit, eh? Okay, do you see from an editing process point of view? I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying ask that question. Maybe I could shorten it because he's got about 3 or 4 commas in there. Maybe you could take out a comma, shorten the sentence, and maybe it will be more specific. Do you see that, guys? Okay. Everyone on the same wavelength? Out of those 4, which one is more pertinent to your work? Joe? Out of those 4.
It's point 2.
Yes.
And 3.
Point 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 2 and 3. So 2 was, just to remind me again.
Key skills deficit across multiple industries.
Okay, and 3?
Global migration.
Global migration. And just go back to your assignment now and look at the second bullet. It says a critical analysis of the 4 workforce trends that currently have the biggest impact on your organization. Do you see that, guys? So now you're going to have to look at these 9 key workforce trends and say which 4 are most pertinent to your environment, your work environment. Does that make sense? Okay. So just look at number 5. Bianca, can I ask you to read, please, number 5? Actually, you've already read, eh? Oh, you haven't read. Okay. Number 5, please, Bianca.
Unprecedented youth unemployment. In almost every country that releases age stratified unemployment statistics, right now there are more unemployed young people than ever before. Add to this that many of these countries, these young people are burdened with the largest student loans ever recorded. But you have a recipe for the disaster. Expect more riots in countries where young people are prone to riots. Take France and any Mediterranean country, for example, but also look out for.
Look what he does there. Also look out for ... Now that's a little bit scary because this was written in 2010 and he's saying think of France and any Mediterranean country. Now we've got family in Greece. Lovely thing about Athens is you go to the Athens University, correct? You can get a master's for nothing. Did you know that? You can go and study for nothing. But they've got a huge problem now because there's a tip. Sorry?
They have no money.
They have no money. There's a tipping point. Nothing can happen for nothing. So that unprecedented student youth loans, students are going to the bank. The banks are giving them loans, correct? Banks are sometimes folding or they foreclosing on those loans. These poor students have now got a degree, and can they get work? Often not. We just have to turn on the TV to know what's happening in France. Students are rioting. Let's turn on the TV with Athens. Students are rioting. Athens University, they're rioting outside the university all the time because now they want to start charging for these courses. Okay, so it's becoming a big problem. So this unprecedented youth unemployment, a big problem. Maybe you can also bring that into your PMA around CSR. What is CSR again? Corporate, social or responsibility. Okay, so giving back to the community. Say, how are we going to help these this unemployed youth that we sit with in South Africa today? How can we help them in our particular business? And that's where you become creative. Because what's lovely about a recommendation, you can tell me, Simpiwe, what's lovely about a recommendation? Come on. Give me a recommendation.
That DaVinci is a good learning institute.
That's wrong. Listen to my words. That's wrong. Okay? What the lovely thing about a recommendation is I can never say that you're wrong. So in a PMA, don't you agree with that statement? I can never say you're wrong because it's a recommendation. It's a creative recommendation. I can say I disagree with you, but I can't say that you're wrong. Think about it for a second. And what's lovely from a PMA point of view is often in the PMAs, Trishan, we call for recommendations, your personal recommendations, but it's based on factual information. So I cannot say that you're wrong, but if you have all the factual information there and you've backed it up from an academic point of view, then I will give you the marks, even if I disagree with what you're saying. If it's a well-written document and it's backed up, I will give you the marks. Isn't that great? So a recommendation, I can never say that you're wrong because it's a recommendation. Only time will tell whether I was right or you were right. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Right. Number 6. Significant entrepreneurial startup and small businesses. Do we see this in South Africa? Ntombi? Definitely, definitely. Why? Because more and more people can't get work. So what are they doing? They're saying, you know what? We're gonna start up our own businesses. Do you want to read through it, or are you okay? You more or less got the gist now. Are you happy with it? You can read through it. Right. Look at the next one. Number 7. It says blended lifestyles and flexible working arrangements. Isn't that interesting? Blended. Look at that word. Blended lifestyles and flexible working arrangements. Who works on flexi hour? Okay. Why? Because of that flexible working hours. Who wants to spend 2 hours in traffic? You're wasting 4 hours of your life every single day. Is it not better maybe to sit at home? I'm not saying it's correct. I'm not saying you must answer the question. I just want you to think about it. Is it not maybe better to sit at home and be more productive being on the computer out of traffic? It's a question that a lot of people are asking, but a lot of people tend to be going back to the 9 to 5 where they want to see bums on seats, excuse the expression, correct? They want to see bums on seats. So you can argue that point. You can maybe bring that up in your assignment as well. Who sees a change from that, from flexi time to bums on seats in their particular work environment?
It happens sometimes at my work, but I mean, I work plant hours, so
okay.
It's pretty upper 6 to 3 o'clock. You know, they actually want you to be there during
okay.
6 to 3 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. So you do. Have you noticed a change or not?
No, it gets towards the busy hours, and then said, yeah, the changes, we want to see you there.
Okay. Okay. Otherwise, it's flexi. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a mate of mine whose dad actually, he was stuck in traffic and also wasting like 4 hours a day. So what his result was, he got a driver, and he just works in the back of the car while his driver gets in there.
Interesting. I've heard of that solution as well. Isn't that creative thinking? Okay. Creative problem solving. Okay. Lovely. And that's what we want in your assignments. So I can say, that's ridiculous. It's a silly recommendation, but it's a recommendation nonetheless. And if you backed it up with factual information, now the guy is, of course, yes, he's spending 4 hours extra a day working on work. And maybe after a week, how many hours has he lost? 5 times 4, he's lost 20 hours. Now with the driver, yes, he's paying the driver. He's created a job, maybe for those entrepreneurs. He's created a job. He's educating that particular person because maybe that person's listening to his job environment. So that students are helping to network with that person. Do you see that, guys? And that's creative thinking. I like that. Thanks, Martin. Right, and look at number 8, generational conflict. Who has worked in the garden with their dad before? Right, who's worked in the garden or washed a car with their grandfather before? Isn't it frustrating? Or their son? Or their child. Is it frustrating? Do you want to kill them? You love them, but you want to kill them. Not so. You can. You only understand that once you've worked with family members, and that's what they're talking about there. Generational conflict. According to Graham Codrington, he states that for the first time ever in history, how many generations are working together? Just guess. Well, okay, yeah, you read well. 4 generations, guys. So now think about yourself. That's like you working with your grandfather, your father, and your son. Imagine all 4 of you working together. Would you be able to stand one another's company? I think we would be tearing out one another's teeth and hair and everything. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. How do we cope with that? With those problems? Anybody in engineering fields here? Engineering company? Are you in engineering? Sorry? Okay. Haven't you got that particular problem, generational conflict, where you've got old, highly intelligent guys, correct? Highly intelligent people, they've got everything up here. Now you've got the young guys, Martin, coming in and saying, no, I don't want to do it like that. And the old guy says, you have to do it like that. We've done it for the last 40 years like that. And you've got this clash, correct? You've got this clash. How do you deal with it? How do you solve it? Remember, academic writing, that's how you're going to bring your point across. I'm not going to read through it. Are you happy with that? Trishan, can I go another couple more minutes? Right, and then the last one is number 9. He talks about... Oh, thank you. And finally, to throw one wild card into the mix, significant job losses among office workers, knowledge workers, and professionals due to artificial intelligence automating complex but essentially repetitive, heuristically rigid jobs. Now, guys, this was written when? 2010. What happened last year in South Africa that was so bad for the economy of South Africa? Sorry? Retrenchments as a result of mining strikes, correct? That was the big thing that hit South Africa. Mining strikes. And look at what he's saying here. This was written in 2010. So you can almost say he was like a prophet of doom and gloom, because he said that this is going to be a problem. Why? Because of automation. They already want to automate the mines, correct? How many jobs are going to be lost as a result of that? Many. Well, how is that going to impact on South Africa? You can bring that into your PMA as well. So yeah, this shows from an academic writing style point of view how he sums it up. He says, and then just to throw another point in, he's thinking outside the box. So this is his recommendation. Now in 2010 we could have said, he's talking nonsense. Now we say, hang on a second, maybe he was right. But in 2010 we could have disagreed with him, correct? Have you agreed? And that's where recommendation comes from. This is his recommendation. This is another point that he sees being a huge, huge problem. Automation in the near future, because technology is just growing too much. And then the big thing is, how does he bring everything together? And what's that word I'm looking for? And there it is, and he says, there it is, 9 key workforce trends for the next decade. How should we respond? I'm not going to try and answer that question in this article. The answer will be different for every industry and every company in every industry. It may even differ by department in your company. But the right response is to ask yourself, how will each of these trends impact on your business, your industry, your market? And it says you can follow some of the answers to this question at my blog site, and then he leaves you with a final statement. It says, buckle your seatbelts. It is turbulent times ahead. Now, let's look at it again. 2010, he wrote this. Things were great. 2010 World Cup. Might have read this article and said, nonsense, man. It's great. Now look at it. We read it in 2013. We're looking back. Is that a valid statement that he's written, buckle your seatbelts? It's turbulent times ahead. Interesting, eh? And do you love the way he's concluded? Is it simple? Is it easy to understand? It doesn't just all of a sudden end, correct? Okay. Any questions around that? If there are no questions, go back to your PMA. Let's look at it. And I'm going to ask Rafilwe, won't you read, please? Just the bullet, the first bullet, it says.
Which one? The summary?
Yes.
A summary of the key aspects discussed in the article by Condrington 2010.
Right. So a summary, eh? So how many workforce trends are you going to have there, Bianca? 9, not 6 or 4, 9, guys. That's the first bullet. So remember, I'm going to be marking that very, very strictly to see if you've completed all of those requirements. And there's 3 separate questions there. So the first thing is to give a synthesized version of Codrington's article, and there's 9 workforce trends. The next bullet, why don't you read for me, please, Maria?
A critical analysis of the 4 workforce trends that currently have the biggest impact on your organization.
Now you can't say, oh no, there's 6. I only want 4. So you have to synthesize and you have to say, right, which 4 are most pertinent to my particular business? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Only 4, guys. And this is where a lot of learners battle, this next bullet. They seem to get confused. Sasha, why don't you read for me, please?
5 practical recommendations to address these trends practically.
So those 4 that you've given, 5 practical, not each for each one, because then you're going to have 20. Just 5 overall practical recommendations on how you're going to address this. So maybe there's loss of time. Martin says loss of time. What's a practical recommendation? The company hires drivers so that people can work in the car, or the company pays for the Gautrain for the employees to work to travel by Gautrain so that they can work on the Gautrain. I know some people who do that as well. So instead of driving in a car, they're not losing downtime now. They're actually working in the vehicle. Does that make sense? So that's where we talk about recommendations. Just read that last one again. Practical recommendations. So there's no wrong or right answers there, guys. It's your creative thought processes there and backing up them. You can't just say the grass is purple. You have to say the grass is purple because of this and this and this, and factual information backing up that statement. Okay. Makes sense, guys? Right, and then out of 45, remember this is the only assignment that changes, 45, it's exactly what we read early on. So Shalia, won't you read for us, please?
Report should include the following: a table of contents, an introduction and conclusion.
Right, stop there. A table of contents is not included in the 3 pages. Everyone always asks me that, okay? So table of contents won't include your 3 pages. So it's a table of contents and then your 3 pages start. So with your table of contents and your bibliography, maybe it'll be about 4.5 pages. Okay, five and a half pages. So cover page 1, table of contents 1, and bibliography maybe half. Okay, so 3 pages only for the actual structure. Does that make sense? Okay, carry on reading, please.
An introduction and conclusion, a logical flow in the discussion and argument, a critical perspective, an appropriate professional language, text references, and a bibliography.
Right. So text. What do they mean by text references? In text. And remember we spoke about how do we reference in text. You can remind me, Brandon?
It's in brackets and then either the page and then the dot and then the 2010 or whatever the article.
Right. Okay. So remember it's open brackets and it's the author. So let's say we're talking about Black 2010, the year of publication, colon 10. In other words, page 10. I just want to show you, I've got this as well. This is the ARC that I told you about. Remember ARC? What does ARC stand for again, please, Emmanuel? Yes? Are you busy reading? You shouldn't read, you should know it off. Come on, ARC. What does A stand for? Accurate, R, rigorous, and C, and consistent. Okay, accurate in what? In our referencing. Okay, accurate. We need to be accurate. And then rigorous, we need to not only look at one referencing site, but maybe a couple, and then formulate our own opinions. And the last one, which was very important, was the consistency. I just want to show you, they give you some examples. I don't know if you can see that. It says the author's name, full stop, 2004, Elizabeth in the Midlands, and then where it was actually published. Okay, so if you're battling with any of those, but the module is actually a well-written module, guys. So anything you want to research or include in your PMA, just look through this module and it'll help you. And remember that last, I think it was the 4th last slide, 13 common errors. Have that in front of you as well. Have I made any of these mistakes? Okay. Any questions? Yes, Sasha.
So like Brandon asked earlier, we've got 3 different separate bullet points that you would like to see in this
yes.
assignment. Would you like for each of the bullets a introduction and body and conclusion?
Okay, Sasha's got a good question there. What do you think, Simpiwe? So Sasha's saying, do we need an introduction for every single bullet and a conclusion for every single bullet?
No, I don't think so.
No, not for this one because it's only 3 pages. But it's a good question to ask. So it's one question. It's one question. So therefore you only have one introduction and one conclusion. Okay. It's not separate sections, 20 marks, 20 marks, 30 marks. Okay, Sasha? But good question. Thank you. Sorry, there was a question there, Joe? No question. Right. And then let's carry on there. It says a logical flow, a critical perspective, and text references, which you spoke about. And then the mark out of 5, response to evaluations. 5 marks. It is extremely important. So you're going to evaluate myself and DaVinci. And as I say to all the learners, it's the only time you can fail me and still pass. So there's no bully boy tactics here. If you didn't enjoy what I was saying, you're basically evaluating me and evaluating the module and saying, you know what, we could have done this better. That was great. I really got a lot out of this section, but this section needs some work. And they're giving you 5 marks for that. Isn't that lovely? Okay. Isn't that lovely, Portia? Okay. Right, guys. I'll give you just 20 seconds. Just quickly, briefly read through the assignment again and just ask me any questions you want to ask.